So yes, I'm giving the, not sure, fourth or fifth talk in this series, sometimes called the Brighton Lectures, sometimes called Buddhism for Today and Tomorrow, sometimes given in the form of a poem called Four Gifts. You can tell there's different ways to talk about it, and I'm afraid I haven't done the YouTube catch-up thing, so I don't know what the previous speakers have said. And although do tell me, actually, no right or wrong answers. Have you been at any of those last four talks? Just raise your hand. If you've been at any of them, you qualify. Okay, handful. I think I will try and recap what they're basically about, but I'm going to come at that. I'm going to come to that later. Like Akshaya Pradeepa and the spiders, I'm going to start with a story or two. It's a couple of stories from my teenage years. They're not really salacious or naughty, because I wasn't naughty enough, I'm afraid, for that. They're stories of a couple of teachers that I had. I was quite a quiet, shy boy, quite serious, but luckily I liked being in plays, and I had a drama teacher. People often remember their drama teacher, I'm told, and I really, really remember mine. Partly, if you do a play, it's not a school subject, is it, usually? And I don't know, you do it in the evenings and you're working up to a performance and everything's a bit different, a bit more exciting. And quite often a drama teacher's got a different kind of connection with pupils because it's off book, you know, it's not the curriculum. It's a bit bolder, it's a bit more fun. Anyway, the memory is of being in a classroom late one evening when we were doing rehearsals, and him saying to me, so I used to be called Ollie, he said, "Ollie, you cannot overact like this." He said, "You cannot do it." Oh, what does he mean? And he meant, show me that you can be too bold. I bet you can't be too bold. As in, shout your lines and overdo it and prove to me that you can overdo it, because I was too quiet. I was, I don't know, not doing it confidently enough. They were probably not even going to hear me properly in the theatre. And he was saying, prove to me that you can overdo it, and I'll tell you if you overdo it. And I remember he told me to get up on the desks, which was terrifying. I'd never seen anyone stand on a school desk, ever. And he said, get up on the desk and overdo it like this. And he was really sort of pushing me. I mean, he was playing a bit, and I knew he was playing. And I just remember him saying, you cannot overact. Get up on the desk, shout it, you know. And it was amazing fun trying to overdo the scene. And what I think he was giving me was confidence and actually, paradoxically, a bit of belief, because he was pushing me in this playful way, saying, I bet you can't overdo it. If you think you can overdo it, show me. You know, show me boldness, show me overdoing it. And well, I enjoyed myself, and I think I probably did get a bit bolder and do the scene a bit better. So that was him. He was called Simon Taylor. And something another teacher gave me, it was a little bit different. My cello teacher, I wasn't destined to be a musician. I think my cello teacher knew. I was smiling at Vandan Jyoti because Vandan Jyoti is a cellist, and probably a cello teacher as well sometimes. Is that right? Was? Yeah. So maybe my fondness for Vandan Jyoti partly comes from the fact I had such a good woman as a cello teacher. Anyway, it wasn't anything to do with music that I remember her giving me. It was interest. So if you're 15 or 16, one of the best things I think an adult can give you is being actually interested in you. And she really was interested in young people and wanted to know what you thought and wanted to know about your life. And I don't blame a lot of parents and a lot of teachers for being a bit weary as they try to chivvy kids through their routine and their lessons and brushing their teeth and all that stuff. But if somebody's actually interested in you, it makes a huge difference. And I remember 3 cello lessons in a row where we didn't get as far as tuning up the instrument because it was sat on the floor because we were talking. And she just made you feel like you mattered, you as an individual. And if you're an awkward 16-year-old and having to drag yourself through that kind of school routine makes a big difference. So I was thinking a little bit about teachers who have given me things because, and this is harder to think about, if you enter the spiritual life and taking that seriously to the point of committing to a particular spiritual life entails having a teacher, and that means that that teacher has, to some extent, given you that spiritual life. Now, you could say spiritual life isn't an object, you just enter into it, you just pick it up. People start on their own largely these days because of apps, of course. I started meditating with a booklet that fell out of a newspaper, but no one gets newspapers anymore or prints booklets. So it's all apps. Why am I telling you this? Yes, if someone has given you a specific way of practicing the spiritual life, it's actually harder to feel gratitude because you don't have, especially if you didn't know the person, as in my case, I didn't really know Sangharakshita, our teacher and founder, although I met him 3 times. I don't have vivid pictures in my mind, like jumping around on that school desk, being told by Simon Taylor, I bet you can't overact, or the cello sitting on the floor and realising as the lesson got to the end that we've got to sort of get round the awkwardness that we haven't done any cello because we've been talking. On the other hand, I've got, now that I've entered into it full time, really the whole of my life as it is now, which means a life, thanks to him, I can orientate around what I find most valuable. I've got him to thank for that. And these Brighton lectures, you can get them in a booklet, by the way, in the bookshop. Looks like that. I think that's Matisse on the front, painting. Buddhism for Today and Tomorrow, it's called. Now, putting aside the lectures for the moment, the poem that he wrote, that Vandana Jyoti mentioned, called 4 Gifts, is a sort of reflection of Sangharakshita's in poetic form of what he thought he might have given to the men and women who very early on had taken up his way of practicing the Buddha's teachings. So you can picture the scene. In 1970-something, first half of the 70s, he had started this new order and movement in London. It was called Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. That was started first, and that was to make sure that there was some support and some sort of, grassroots activity so that a year later the Western Buddhist Order could be founded. So he'd done that in the late 60s. Anyway, loads and loads of activity, incredible inspiration. Apparently he himself, Sangharakshita, used to plan the thing, publicise it, make the tea, make the sandwiches, teach the meditation and clear up afterwards. So soon he was stimulating others to help him do some of those other jobs so he could concentrate on the communication. But he'd sort of blazed a trail like this for 5, 6, 7 years, and then he decided to go away for, I think, a year. It was at least 6 months, but it might be 12. I think it turned out something more like 6, but he said, I'm going for a year. So he had ordained some people. So that's like those of us who've got this white kesa and Sanskrit or Pali name, a Buddhist name, like the one Sanghadharan introduced for me. Taught some meditation classes, led some retreats, taught them some rudiments of the Buddha's teaching, and then said, okay, over to you for a year. I'm off. And he went to a cottage that somebody lent him in Cornwall by the sea, that they had or had use of, and just said, yep, go ahead, have the cottage for a year to meditate, look at the scenery, reflect, and actually get away from this fast mounting responsibility for a little while. And while he was there, he wrote this poem. So I better read it to you now. I've told you all about the poem. Here it is, 4 Gifts. I come to you with 4 gifts. The first gift is a lotus flower. Do you understand? My second gift is a golden net. Can you recognize it? My third gift is a shepherd's round dance. Do your feet know how to dance? My fourth gift is a garden planted in the wilderness. Could you work there? I come to you with 4 gifts. Dare you accept them? That's it. Okay. He's not drawing attention, by the way, to himself being the giver of the gifts. What he's reflecting on is, if you pass people the Buddhist teachings, and any Buddhist teacher worth their salt is not making it about themselves and knows that they're passing on ultimately what the Buddha has given, that the stream, at least of inspiration, ideally of insight, flows from the Buddha to some extent through Buddhist teachers. And if you hand that on, well, you aren't the owner of it. You're just handing it on and trying to light the spark in other people. So 4 gifts. The first gift is a lotus flower. So if you were at the talk called A Method of Personal Development, that's what the lotus flower here stands for. Like any symbol, by the way, the meanings are probably inexhaustible. But he, at least, when he gave it as a set of lectures, a sort of conceptual expanding out of what's really condensed in the poem, he called that first one A Method of Personal Development. Now that's a lotus flower because lotuses in Buddhism, they're all to do with the unfurling of petals and, if you like, the unfurling of potential. And it signifies the individual developing. More of the potential that's in every individual coming out and being expressed, and that individual growing. So that was. He also termed it a method of personal development because I suppose the lotus doesn't, in a vacuum, open out. It opens out if it's got the right conditions. I don't actually know that much about lotus flowers. I've only ever seen a few. But mud and water and sunlight, I believe, are involved, like they are with any flower. What it really means is that the individual can evolve. The individual consciousness can develop and grow. So that's not consciousness as in the technical matter, like you're unconscious when you're asleep and you're conscious when you wake up. It means your whole being, which is always mediated through your consciousness, can grow. If you have an actual method for that, so much the better. Not just so much the better, I mean it's crucial. It's all very well to think about potential and growth, but how do you actually do it? I mean, some of the main tools we've got for this, by the way, you've probably got already, being mindfulness of breathing, metta bhavana. If you've attended a puja or a ritual, certainly if you've been on a retreat and done all the things that involves, you've probably become involved in the method of personal development that he's referring to. Okay. So, so far so good. That means that you can work on your mental states. To put it in a really day-to-day, ordinary way, means your mental state is in your own hands. Not just you can create a positive one, but your overall momentum of mental states you can improve. You can be in a more generous, more open-hearted mood even, more of the time, if you do certain things. So it stands for that. He also sometimes calls this the path of regular steps. It means apply yourself to certain methods of growth, and those petals will unfurl. Now the second gift, so it says the first gift is a lotus flower. Do you understand? I don't know. Sangharakshita, I don't know. Because it's quite deep, probably. My second gift is a golden net. Can you recognise it? For reasons I won't go into, the golden net symbolises a vision of existence. Okay, so briefly, what that stands for is the view of reality, or the vision, or the truth underpinning that mechanism of consciousness developing. So you can improve your mental states in, if this was a PowerPoint, in slide 1. Luckily it's not. You can improve your mental states in slide 1. In slide 2 he's saying that's on the basis of certain laws or regularities in the universe which if you learn about deeply enough, you can actually master the flow of them. So not just if you meditate more, you'll become more aware and more kind. If you understand the cycle of the mind, the actual operations of consciousness, you will attain a kind of decisive insight into what existence is and isn't, and start to move more definitively away from suffering, because, just briefly, the Buddhist vision is that suffering, which, I mean, is one of the most famous things that the Buddha has taught, is that life, sooner or later, involves some suffering, comes from an error of seeing. It comes from not understanding what is. So in this second one, the golden net, or the vision of existence, you're starting to actually grasp that. Okay? So that's the kind of preliminary. The third and fourth ones are what I want to focus on a bit more. The third one, I'll just stay in the prosaic language now, is called Nucleus of a New Society. So presumably you heard about that last week. Was anyone at that talk, Nucleus of a New Society? In fact, really it was probably called, it was 2 weeks ago. Oh yes, because it was Path to Ordination last week. Okay. It inevitably follows from the first two. So you acknowledge that there is a method for improving your mental states, and a kind of, I just don't want to call it a mechanism. You can attain vision of what underpins that and gain a more decisive insight, which means eventually your progress can become irreversible and you can't fall back into the same bad habits, mean or ungenerous moods, etc. Okay, the nucleus of a new society is basically the fellowship of people who are committing to doing that. I nearly said that in one word, didn't I? Just like a really long word with loads of hyphens. Fellowship of people committed to doing that. You need that, because you might be kenning by now. It's a somewhat incomplete list until you get to the end. Yeah? Lotus flower, your potential. Golden net, vision of existence. Okay? Nucleus of a new society, that's people who are saying, I am going to pledge the rest of my life to trying to realise that, to working in those ways. Yeah. So, again, in really ordinary terms, this is a kind of reference to our order. It can be interpreted a number of ways, but let's just say order members, and if you were here last week, you did hear about becoming an order member, I believe, have said, whether or not they regret it later, I will for the rest of my life work towards realising that wisdom that becomes irreversible, on the basis of which my mental states are now irreversibly creative. Yeah. We need lots of communication, fellowship, support, closeness, overlap, just being together. And now the fourth, which is my subject, you'll be glad to hear because I'm halfway through my time, just noticed, is that nucleus, the metaphor breaks down a bit, starting to spread out into the world. Okay, so my title is A Blueprint for a New World. What he felt he'd given there, this is the garden planted in the wilderness, by the way. I don't know if that image is evocative for you. If you build a wall around a garden in a wilderness and start to cultivate plants there, the wilderness outside and the garden inside are both operating according to the laws of nature, but one of them is very much cultivated, isn't it? And the worst of the wind and the hail aren't going to hit it and flatten tender little shoots and plants when they're just getting going. Yeah? So if you've got gnarly trees and shrubs in the wilderness outside, you've got flowers and fruits and, beautiful trees inside the garden. He's saying that's our movement. Now what that means is the activities of the order. So once at least some men and women have committed to this life, and we as order members, as I understand it anyway, are saying, for the rest of my life I'm going to put that at the centre And all other questions and priorities are going to answer to that priority in the end. We work in the world. But where Sangadhara mentioned I lived here and worked here, people often asked me, aren't you worried about being in a bubble? It's a common question. Fair question. I never felt like I was in one because, well, if I was in a bubble, then everyone in this room, for example, is in a bubble. And I could just say back, aren't you worried that we're all in a bubble together? The centres like this exist for a flow of basically friendly communication. Okay, it's got some higher goals than that, which I've already named, so I won't go into that again. They basically exist as channels to try and facilitate a flow of friendly communication, so that people can start to step into that world and we can all, as it were, work in that garden. He says, my fourth gift is a garden planted in the wilderness. Could you work there? He's saying, in a way, do you dare to step into that work? The good thing is there's lots of levels of that work. Okay? So in these sort of seminal talks, which he gave 50 years ago this year, Buddhism for Today and Tomorrow, he named some ways in which you can get involved if you want to. The design of what we do is that you can live a fully committed Buddhist life, live in a residential community, work in a team of Buddhists, for example, running a centre, which is what I did, going on retreat frequently, etc., etc. Or you can have a family, live at home, come to the centre regularly, support activities, go on retreat when you can. Or you can come to the centre once a week for the benefits that gives you. And everything in between. So that's part of his design, was that you can keep taking steps further and further inward as far as you want to, and not if you don't want to. So there's two more places I could go with this and try and just decide where. Okay. Okay, if you've been on a retreat, you've experienced what he would call, you've experienced a little bit of what he would call a new world. Okay? Raise your hand if you've been on a retreat. Just indulge me. Okay, pretty good. Perhaps that's where you all were last week. On a retreat, you work up and develop together a world that is actually changing. Okay, where you don't need to worry about anything, ideally, apart from washing a few dishes 2 or 3 times in the week that you're there. Amazing. What's not to like? Except washing up is usually one of the things people enjoy most on retreats, I've noticed. I don't know why that is. You can tell me when you come back from your next one. On a retreat, you're in a world where everybody's practicing the Metta Bhavana, fellowship with other human beings. Mindfulness, friendship, communication, silence, and some withdrawal, as well as actually, paradoxically, engaging more with your life. Yeah? The real question is, what do you do about it afterwards? Okay, so I've got 3 suggestions, and then I'm going to talk about the Buddha, and then I think that'll be the end. So Sangharakshita was extremely keen, passionate, actually, about offering people that full-time Buddhist life, if they want it. He did away with the traditional distinction between monastic and lay. So, as I've said, as order members, we've got a new name, we've got a kesa. We may choose to live in a residential community with other Buddhists and so on, but we don't have to. It's not monastic, it's not lay, it's the subject of another talk. But that traditional split, he was no longer interested in. He didn't think that would work now. So he founded this new model. Most people, of course, do choose to have a career and sooner or later a long-term partner, a property, usually children, and of course you can, as I say, live as a Buddhist while doing that. If so, brilliant. If you can do all that, amazing. Very impressive. I haven't chosen that road, but I really admire people who can work on all those fronts at the same time. Yep. So if that's the case for you, I'm going to make one, I swear this is not a fundraiser, okay? But I'm going to make a recommendation. In the traditional East, people who were living a lay life, that means a household life, bringing up children, shopping and cooking, involved in the upbringing, education of children, all those things, would support people in full-time religious life by giving them things like food and clothing. That was so that the full-timers could concentrate on their meditation, study and teaching, so they didn't have to worry, they weren't encumbered by those things and could really, as we say now, go deeper into the teachings. Yeah, they were free to do that. Okay, it's not like that now, but we do have an equivalent, which is Buddhist centres. So if you're at all inspired, and there are other options, by the way, if you're at all inspired by your contact with the Buddhist centre, I would really recommend acting on that as part of the strengthening and spreading of this new world that you get a taste of, perhaps even on an evening at a Buddhist centre, but definitely on retreat, by supporting that Buddhist centre. There's a few ways you can do that. It's not just giving money. You could give time and energy. You can actually get involved and ask order members, what can I do, what can I offer, and give of your time and energy. In a sense, that's even more precious than money. If you can't do that, perhaps you can think about giving some money to a local Buddhist centre, because it might be that you value what the people there are doing, even though you're not doing it yourself. People sometimes feel that a committed spiritual community, which is what the order aims to be, even if we aren't involved in it, even if we don't know that much about it, simply stands for something. Sometimes people are just glad to know it's there. If you work at this centre at least, or when I was here, it involved quite often covering the reception desk. And it's amazing how happy people are when they come in to discover that there's a Buddhist centre here. Time after time after time, I've watched somebody wander in and kind of look about them like this. Kind of up, down, across, down, side to side. And then their eyes sort of find yours and they're not sure what to ask because they're just enjoying it. And the usual form is they say, when are the meditation classes? And you say, well, they're at 1:00, and you hand them a leaflet and they say thanks. And they just sort of walk out again, just having enjoyed the fact that this is here. Yeah? So maybe we just value that it's there and that some people are doing it and we have a wish to support them. Okay? So that's one option. Two others are, if you don't have those commitments and you're inspired, you may want to think, it's up to you of course, so bold recommendation, but you may want to think, how am I going to spend my months and years? What do I want? Maybe I want to go further towards this Buddhism thing that is inspiring me, and therefore I want to change some of the conditions in my life. When I was first coming along here, one of the first things I wanted to change was where and how I lived. Okay, so I started asking about community. When I walked in and did that thing, I started asking about community living and went to the notice board and pinned up a little ad of my own and scribbled down things. We didn't take photos with phones then, but I scribbled down things that were on people's adverts and rang some people about living with other Buddhists, because I already knew I want to live with other people who are pursuing meditation. So you can live with other Buddhists. Eventually I moved in upstairs to Sikhavati Communities, it's called, and had 11 very happy years there. I think they were happy. I mean, a lot of them were. Enough of them were. It was fruitful. That's what we say. It was fruitful. I'm sure it was a happy time overall. I've had to put one word on it. I look back on it with intense fondness. Kind of a weird place when I moved in. It seemed to be very dark. The building got sort of gutted and rebuilt in all sorts of exotic ways. So you go down what looks like a corridor, you get to a door, you push it, it doesn't open, and it's sort of blocked up from the other side. Okay, you try another one. For some reason, anyway, I don't know why lots of the lights were off, but they were. And I remember I used to bump my head against a sort of mobile that someone had hung in the corridor that was the shape of planets and stars. And I lay down in bed on my first night in the community, turned the lights off, and these letters, and I lay on my side like this, and these letters glowed right in front of my eyes. It said, Padmadara, ! In glow-in-the-dark letters, okay? Because the room used to belong to a guy called Padmadara who'd gone away on his ordination retreat, and there's a tradition that when you're away on your long ordination retreat, before you come back, people decorate your room with all sorts of stuff. So I enjoyed thinking about Padmadara. I don't know if he remembers this, but I do. Getting back to his room after a 4-month ordination retreat, finally on his own, probably plane flights, all the rest of it, unpacking, putting on his pyjamas, climbing up the ladder to this platform bed, turning the light off, and there's one more celebratory decoration. It says Padmadara like that right in front of him. Anyway, that's where I moved into. A whole kind of place given over to what we're doing here. And yeah, no time to sum up 11 years of that, but I've made it inestimable difference in my life moving into a Buddhist community. The other thing you can do is work with Buddhists. Maybe there's not quite enough time to talk about this, but perhaps just quickly, there are some opportunities to do this. Okay, disclaimer, there aren't as many as there used to be, but just in this area, for example, I think the centre might support nearly 40 people nowadays. Okay, that's the Buddhist centre, that's 2 charity shops, that's a retreat centre, maybe other things that have been invented since I left, I don't know. You can work with other Buddhists, and boy, do you get to know yourself and other people when you work with them. Okay, because those aren't work environments where you just clock in and clock out, ignore people, or only talk to people for what you can get out of them. They're environments where you actually get to know people, and you go on a bit of an adventure. Just very quickly, what I've been doing just before then, I was the online editor of a magazine, and it was kind of swanky, and I used to wear a jackety thing and had business cards that I gave people, and I felt kind of cool. And there were parties with free drinks and writers hanging around who were semi-famous, and it was sort of all right. But anyway, I left it all for reasons, obviously, got involved here. And I didn't know what had hit me. I was booking one person after another on retreats, and they were either going on the retreat or not. And quite often they'd ring me up to say, I've changed my mind, I actually am going on the coach, so can I pay you £40 and be booked on the coach? I'd have to do that. But one of the first things I was asked to do was replace the instructions for an overhead projector. Sorry, this is a weird story. The overhead projector, the instructions needed replacing. There were photographs, and I was to repeat these photographs. And there was a photograph of somebody pushing the on switch on the overhead projector, literally a finger entering the frame like this. And because the projector was new, I had to renew the instructions. Yeah, and I was asked to take so I found myself taking a photograph of an on button, which seemed to me pretty obvious. That's what you push if you want the thing to be on, with my fingertip entering the frame. I thought, what has happened to my life? A real shock. Anyway, quite some years later, I'm still doing it. You'll be glad to know. I did all sorts of other things for the centre, and now, as Sanghadaran said, I help run retreats for men training to join the order. It wasn't all overhead projectors. In fact, hardly any of it was. But actually, learning to work for a Buddhist centre was very, very interesting in ways there weren't even always time to digest. I'll tell you another story that's a bit more positive. A guy booked a course, he regretted it for some reason, rang me up and demanded a refund. And now it seemed to me that our policy didn't allow him a refund. Yeah. So I had a go at saying that. He got very angry. Very angry. And I had this strange experience. I was holding the phone, and it's very distinct. You know when this is happening. I don't bear him any grudge. He was relating to me like I was an institution. He was warring with me as an institution and demanding the money back. I wasn't being that intransigent about the cash. I don't think. It was just, I don't know, the course had started or something, and you don't get a refund at that point. I can't remember what. He was really having a go. And I still remember holding, you can always see where you were on a phone call, holding this plastic receiver thinking, I'm not different to you. I really remember thinking, this phone call makes it feel as if we're on different sides of a fence. There's tension. It's even mounting into a weird kind of conflict. I was getting ready to abandon my refund position, by the way. But I remember thinking, I've got this very clear sense, and he doesn't at the moment have it, that I'm not different from him. Because just a year or two ago, I was booking the course. All I've done is say, yes, okay, I'll have a crack at being on the other end of that phone and those phone calls. That was it. I thought, I'm not different from you. Anyway, just a little kind of mini insight with a small I that happened during the workday. Unpleasant phone call, but I thought, I know what he's doing because I've done that, but I know what I'm doing because I'm now doing this, and I don't feel different from him, and I don't feel unconnected from him. Really amazing. I don't think, we probably passed on kind of neutral terms, and I sent the money back, but always remembered that guy. I don't know if I've ever actually met him. I just remember his voice. Okay, so there's three things you can do. I hope that's sort of clear enough as a way to start to build what Bhante, Sangharakshita, our teacher, called a blueprint for a new world. You could give to a Buddhist centre by supporting it with your time or your energy or your money, or best of all three, if you aren't in a position to get more involved. If you are, you could try living and or working with other Buddhists. If you can't do those, here's an even simpler thing you could do, which is go on retreat regularly. Then you get to live in an environment. You go to a slightly strange place, you share a room, you can't control the food, maybe the people seem a bit strange, the place is quite magical. You live in a slightly transformed world. It's a bit of a shock when you leave. Last time I was at the LBC's retreat centre, I remember having this very clear thought, we're not in Suffolk. It is in Suffolk. But I was there thinking, we're not in Suffolk. We're in a world of meditation and growth where people look at you and take you in. But I suppose because enough times I've left, and then you nearly get mown down at Liverpool Street Station, and you think, what's happened? How do you square this? How do you connect these two things? It's unbelievably different. The retreat equips you to square that and to build a link between the two. But if you can't live or work with other Buddhists, at least go on retreat frequently. Make it a regular part of your year and of your life. We always say at the end of a retreat, you'll know this if you've been, book another one really soon, before you forget what it's like. Or if you're at all interested in what I'm saying, book one when you get home tonight. Taste that other world. Okay. I want to invoke the Buddha just briefly. He's not, strictly speaking, involved in these 4 lectures, but I thought, any talk on Buddhism, we need the ideal, and we're sitting next to this beautiful golden figure of the Buddha. He knew that there's a great problem, and he had an answer for what I call the great debate. Okay? The great problem is that there's suffering. Everybody knows that, at least by the time they're an adult, sooner or later, probably quite sooner. There is suffering that's involved in life. Okay? The great debate, what do you do about it? The Buddha taught an actual path. He didn't just have an insight. If you like, if one of the best known things about the Buddha is that he broke through and was enlightened, a slightly less well known thing about him is that he actually taught the way there. Another of his disciples, in leading exponents of Buddhism in another part of the world, said he's not the giver of liberation, he's the shower of the path. In other words, he can't give salvation like God can, apparently. He shows you the path towards it. Yeah? So there is an answer in what the Buddha's taught as to what you do about it. Quite often we get tempted to think about, why is there suffering? For a Buddhist, that is much less important. Actually, he kind of commented on that as well, but only insofar as it was useful for knowing how to get out of it. Yeah? Extremely practical. If people tell you, like they quite often want to, Buddhism is a philosophy, it's a very popular line, well, I'm not sure I agree. or it's not one that's going to be able to compete with other philosophies, because all it's concerned with is getting you out of suffering. Okay? Now, by the time you get to 2,500 years later, you've got 1,000 maps of the way out. Okay? You've got Tibetans in maroon robes and different kinds of hats for their different orders and very exotic chants that they do. You've got Japanese schools where you just do one mantra, that's the whole practice. One mantra, that's all you ever do. You've got Zen, where I've never done this, but apparently you sit very close to a wall and look at the wall for a long time. You've got some schools and sects that intensify study very much, turning over the teaching. The Zen tradition also has the koan, the riddle, that you try and crack until the paradox of it just sort of breaks something in your mind and you break through. What Sangharakshita feels he's given us, and the reason he wrote this poem, Four Gifts, is you've got things you can actually relate to now and do now. So this fourth talk is particularly concerned with that. What can you actually do now? Hopefully that's clear enough from what I've said. But I wanted to also invoke this stream of spiritual blessings that has been flowing since the Buddha broke through. So even this, Buddhism for Today and Tomorrow, lectures given 50 years ago, which we sometimes still recapitulate because we feel that they have some content which is alive now, in a slightly different way from 1976, but some way that can be totally relevant for you if you work at it. And the Buddha's breakthrough, very, very much connected, slightly mysteriously so. But if you enter more fully onto the path by those methods I've outlined, you will start gradually to uncover a little more of that, and the petals of the lotus will open ever more, gradually, and you may catch a glimpse of the golden net, or the vision of existence. You may even want to go all the way into the nucleus of the new society and join the order. Speak to one of the order members if you do. Commit your life and say, actually, I'm going to put this right at the centre. I'm not going to embarrass him, but there's someone in the room who did that last week. Sent a letter to our retreat centre saying, I'd like to do this. Part of my job, I read those letters. We get 1 or 2 a week. Statements from somebody saying, I've decided what I want to give the rest of my life to. Yeah. You might be interested. If you're not, that's absolutely fine. You can do some of those other things I've recommended. As I say, Sangharakshita, what he really wanted to build a Buddhist world, a world in which you can practice this. So from wherever you are, whatever the level, whatever the lifestyle, you can take steps. If you're in any doubt what they are, ask someone who looks like they might be an order member, and they'll be able to give you some tips. What I'm going to do is finish by reading the poem once more, now that I hope I've fleshed out a little bit of what it's saying, and now that your series on the Four Gifts or the Brighton Lectures is ending. And that'll be the end of our evening. Four Gifts. I come to you with 4 gifts. The first gift is a lotus flower. Do you understand? My second gift is a golden net. Can you recognize it? My third gift is a shepherd's round dance. Do your feet know how to dance? My fourth gift is a garden planted in the wilderness. Could you work there? I come to you with 4 gifts. Dare you accept them?